Hello, and welcome to Shades of Pleasure, a podcast celebrating pleasure, sexuality, and the vibrant, inclusive spectrum of love, gender, and relationships. I'm your host, Mo, and with me are my co-hosts, Melissa, Wayne, and Kelly. And together we hope to dismantle tropes that no longer suit us. Okay. Go ahead, Kelly.
No, tell you have a really good topic. Tell us. I'll
Yeah,
give
so
you
I
my
wanted
feedback.
to talk about emotional labor in relationships, the imbalance of it, and how that impacts couples when it comes to libido. Um, because typically, I think I see that's the first thing that goes. And I know this is going to sound really gendered, but majority of the time I see the women are doing the emotional labor. And what that typically means, like this particular new client of mine, and this is just kind of across the board, so I don't want to out anybody. This is a theme I see in couples therapy in general is one person is carrying the emotional load. What does that mean? It means they're really craving emotional connection and intimacy, but their bids for emotional connection and intimacy are somehow being missed. And like 50% of the population, men, not to out you, Wayne, because you're probably not one of these men, and maybe you are, maybe you've learned a lot. I think there is a lot that men can learn, and I think that what happens is despite the parenting that goes on at home, men are socialized in our culture to man up, to not cry, all of those the traits that we associate with being masculine. And in the process, they are not as emotionally attuned as women are. Now, women tend to be emotionally attuned and they tend to talk about their feelings a lot. Um, and we can get into this more also. I'm kind of going on, getting tangential here, but I think a lot of times women their bids for connection will be verbal. They'll want to talk about something, they'll say something, and then the men's responses are very cold, they're not connected, and the women feel kind of abandoned in those moments. So they feel like they're always doing the emotional labor. And um, the thing is that I think that a lot of men don't understand what this means, right? It's not that they don't want to do it, it's that they don't understand what it is. And so then they, in their process of trying to understand, the women get more frustrated and the men actually become scared and I don't know how to show up for my woman. I don't know how to show up in the way that she wants me to. And it kind of folds in on itself. So I'm just going to start there. I'm going to let any of you jump in.
No, I see that. I see that quite a bit too. I think this is a good topic, and yeah, I see the same thing. It does tend to be a little bit more gendered than a lot of the things we talk about, and I find the same thing over and over that it's a lot of times it will be the woman doing most of the emotional labor, and it's not just for bids for intimacy, it's for keeping the household going, it's for taking care of the kids, it's across the board. But I know we're here to talk about it through the lens of sexuality, but it's really not sexy if you're having to take care of another person in the house and they're not doing their part. And I think you're right, one of the first places that it starts to show up is in intimacy and lack of that, of wanting to do that.
Yeah, I just watched the show, and it's a terrible show. I mean, it's not terrible. It's like one of those suspense, like edge of your seat. It's called, I think, All Her Fault or something like that. And it's a murder mystery, basically, or like a kidnapping mystery. But one of the themes in the show is that their mothers, the two of them are mothers, and their husbands both kind of have this thing where um, they talk about one of the very first things they say in the first episode is, yeah, my husband is always telling me how amazing I am, how amazing I am at all of the things that I do. And she's like, I don't want to hear that. Like, that's the last thing I want, right? I don't want your praise on how amazing I am. And it kind of it's a foreshadowing for the rest of the show. But yeah, men don't really like the common thing that men say is, tell me what you want. Tell me what you want and I'll do it. Right? And
Oh,
that is also like, it still requires the woman to tell him to figure out
yeah.
what it is she wants. Like, it's still putting the onus on the female partner to tell him what to do. Right? I'll do anything that you ask, just let me know what it is. The women are tired, y'all. The women in these relationships are tired. They're doing the main load of scheduling the dentist appointments, making sure the kids get to the right place. Even if they're not doing the actual driving, maybe the husband is doing the driving. But the women are scheduling them, making sure it's getting done. And that's, I think they use two different terms. I've heard that could be called mental load, like mental load and emotional labor being two different things, like, but
Mhm.
of the same thing, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. It's just sort of which route do we want to go down as far as how we're going to discuss it. I don't know. Is anything coming up for you, Wayne or Melissa?
Sorry, we was just trying to be on mute over here because Alani is not leaving us alone. The baby's not leaving us alone, and it's hard to think. Something is, yes, did come up. I was trying to hold it because I feel like maybe it might be too soon because it's almost like a little uh what do you call it, Kelly? Devil's advocate or like,
Oh,
but I mean I can still do it, but do you have anything first?
I was just thinking, and I know what we're talking about. Again, it made me think about again, like we talk about. Can y'all hear that?
no, I can't hear the baby at all.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So it kind of falls in line with just like again, gender norms, like how we tend to treat boys at a young age is different than we treat girls. And so, it's more so just not understanding and knowing, and it can go either way. In context of this, I can completely understand, like just because me, be me and a man, it's like, you know, being brought up in under the idea of, like, oh, as the provider or the supposed to be in fit a certain role, like I'm supposed to go out and do these things, and women tend to be the ones who cook and all kind of it, you know for our relationship it's not like that at all. Like I actually enjoy cooking, and all that, but this did come up around when it came to raising kids at a young age around because of the fact that Melissa's breastfeeding. So I'm thinking like, oh, I can't breastfeed, so what use am I right now? And I kind of fall into that line of like, what do you need me to do, because I can't do this and I can't do that type of thing. So I can definitely understand it.
I think to your point, Wayne, like when women have the baby initially, like those very first few years, there is this sort of natural, intuitive, the mom bonds with the baby initially first, right? She breastfeeds, she's in tune with like the baby's eating and sleeping cycles. But eventually, like, she can grow out of that role if the man is supportive. But I think what happens is men fall into this pattern of helplessness, right? Like she's in charge, she knows what to do, da 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 da. And it sort of like it perpetuates into the child getting into their older years, and men feeling more and more disconnected and not really knowing how to show up. So I think it does start like that, and I think that that's natural, right? It's normal. I've read like, and like attachment stuff, like, and like just like, like development stuff, that's normal. Like the first couple years the baby is going to be more attached to the mother. In fact, a lot of men experience jealousy, feeling left out and things like that during those first few years, particularly. Yeah, so yeah, Wayne, unless you've done it before, and you've done it multiple times and you still like recognize experiencing that.
Yeah. And I actually, I look forward to the flip. That's what I say. Like they want to come hang out with me or want to do things with me. Like, hey, you want to go to the store? They'd be like, no. I'd be like, hey, you want to come ride with me? No. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, give your mom a break. No.
Yeah. I
But
think
yeah.
a lot of men are doing that, giving the mom a break, but it's more about being a co-partner and a
Yes.
co-parent, right? It's more about like I'm gonna, you're having the kid 9 hours a day. That leaves 3 hours with me. Let's balance that even more. Let me do some of the, planning. Like I'll go to some of the parent teacher meetings. I'll call the dentist and make the dentist or whatever. I'll start handling some of those things so that you don't have to. And I think that men, instead of seeing it as giving the woman a break, right? Because that still centers the woman as the main parent. Seeing it more as like I got to step up to the plate and do more than my wife is doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Or
And
my
what
my
came up for me,
partner, not
yeah,
necessarily.
what came up for me just now is that right, I think it's just like changing the narrative, right? Like reframing because in the sense of the days of this is my job, I do this, and this is your job, you do this. It's kind of over, right? So it is more so in today, and that's why I think there's so much pushback right now with a lot of men on social media and everything. Like, yeah, women don't know how to be wives, and all can because of the shift in society that is happening, and that it's more that it's more of a partnership wanted than it is a hey, you're the leader, you do all the things and just let me, and I think that is part of the problem. So, and I definitely do see a shift is happening, and I do think that women are kind of wanting more of a equal, like a partnership, right? To where we can both share the load of washing clothes and doing dishes and like you said, creating appointments and going to school for parenting things in that nature, so
Yeah.
yeah.
And I do want to get to your point, Melissa, about because I know you have a devil's advocate point, but like a couple of weeks ago, Melissa made this comment about like going to the grocery store and you guys separating and like, no, I want to do that together. And I think that kind of is a really good like example of this. No, let's do it together, right? Like, let's not divide it so it's split equally, right? Let's do it together. And I think that kind of support can go a long way. Anyway, go ahead, Melissa. I know you had.
Well, now other things have come up, so but it makes me think about something that comes has come up often in my sessions with my clients. And I think something that I got from some movie or something, but I can't remember what. But it's this concept of wanting you to want to XYZ, like I want you to want to. And this has been one of the hardest, like disconnects to try to bridge, which is generally between men and women, a little bit gendered, but and I don't, it's like I don't, it's either they get it or they don't. And I don't know personally how to help bridge that gap because I feel like I definitely understand the person who is saying, I want you to want to. And then I've grown to understand the person who is like, I don't even know what that means, and I am trying so hard. I don't like I do want to. It's like I want to. Um,
Yeah.
and I still don't quite know, maybe y'all can help me. I still don't quite know what exactly that is. But I know that, but I feel it. Like I know that it exists. And it's like you can just, I don't know, and maybe this is something I don't know. It's like you can just tell it's like presence. I think attunement maybe is what it is, Mo. Like you mentioned attunement. It's just that you can tell when somebody, even if they are trying to figure something out, like that they really want to be there and kind of like you said, and they want to do it together and they like want to be there for it. Not just to the task, not to just mark off the thing, and not and it's like I really want to, and I think there's that emotional attunement piece is maybe what it is. It's like I am here emotionally with you, I am here energetically with you,
Yeah.
something like that. But yeah, that's one thing.
It's like an embodied form of
Embodied,
connection.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
right. It's not like,
Not
okay,
intellectual, it's
yeah,
not an
yeah. It's not
understanding, it's
let me take these off your plate and do them over here so that you get a break. It's let me come in and be present and
join you.
enjoying you. And like honestly, like in that moment, a lot of it, like the woman saying, "I'm so exhausted, I'm so burnt out, I just, you know, want some support." Really, she might just want support of the partner sitting there, being present, like being completely present, not taking tasks off her plate, not right like giving her a break, which she might want that as well, like her own time, but actually like a joint thing is what we're talking about here, where he's present and he's like, "Hey, let's put the dishes aside and let me and you go and, you know, spend the afternoon together," or, you know, something like that. Like, because what happens, I think, the thing that people are frustrated about when they're taking on the emotional labor in a relationship is they're taking care of everything and everyone, right? They're taking care of so many things that they're actually becoming disconnected from pleasure, from fun, from joy, and thus sexuality, right? Because that's where sexuality comes from. It's when we're like in that moment of like having just fun, or we're relaxed and we feel good, right? But when we're taking care of everyone and everything, we become control freaks. There's no time for relaxation and fun, right? All of that starts to fall by the wayside. And so, no, there's not. So, when the partner approaches and says, "Hey, let's, you know, let's have some fun, you know, let's, you know, let me give you an orgasm," for example. No, she's like, no. She's in control mode, right? And so uh, what you're talking about, Melissa, is that attunement. Like, if they do this together, it's going to be easier to get into that space of relaxation, pleasure, joy, and fun, which is going to be an easier transition into like furthering their intimacy and their connection.
Yeah, I know that thing you're talking about too, though, Melissa, and it's hard because it's like if someone can name what they want, even though like, look, I want you to want this, right? But they still have to name what they want. Then yeah, they're having to do the emotional labor, like you're talking about, Mo. But also, if you are able to express like a need, just sort of an overarching need, not hey, you do the dishes, you do it, but I need you to be connected with me. I need you to be more of a partner. You know, if you ask for it, I also found that people sometimes have a hard time then accepting it. Well, no, now you're just doing it because I told you I needed you to do it. And I do bump up against that with folks too, because I'm like, yes, you're correct. And also, we're working on getting you what you need. And so that's can be a really tricky line to walk with people.
It's a process, right? I think
Yeah.
first step is like I'll assign homework to clients, you know, around like sensate focus, which is towards intimacy, but the initial stages are really just about developing connection. And in those initial stages, it does feel awkward, right? He is or she is doing it because the other person asked, right? But it's also a muscle, right? Like if someone wants you to ride your bike and you really want to do it, but you've never ridden a bike before, you're going to have to start by practicing. And that practicing phase is like a learning curve of like that. Those early stages are going to feel awkward. They're going to feel forced until you learn how to do it. And then you might be like, oh, now I'm doing wheelies. And now I'm like, you know, competing in these bike races. But like you can't come into your own around those things until you practice it. Right. So for the partner that's feeling like it's rehearsed or it doesn't feel authentic, you know, I think it's important to remind them like, yeah, it is going to feel that way in the beginning. That's how
Mhm.
your partner's going to learn. This is
Yeah, I
your
think it's
partner
that authentic
learning.
part. Yeah, that's the authentic part that I think you're talking about, Mo, that really resonated with me. And it's difficult because usually by the time they come to talk with us about it, it's already a problem and they've already dug themselves in a hole that if they could have gotten out on their own, they would have. And so you're not only teaching something new to move forward with, you're having to go back and repair some of the damage that was already done. So there's like a dual process having to happen. And those are, it's hard to heal from something when it's still happening.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm saying women are the women. And again, I'm saying women over and over, but a lot of times this could be somebody else. Like it could be a male, it could be a non binary person, but the person that is complaining about feeling emotionally overloaded by the time they come to therapy and have reached out, they're so frustrated that like they don't even sometimes it's really hard for them to even show up to therapy and show up for these homework assignments that we might give them because they're at the end, right? They've been trying on their own for so long that now it like it becomes really imbalanced, and then the other person now like has to learn and catch up. And it's, yeah, like you said, Kelly, it's like now we have to do the repair work and the unlearning and relearning work all simultaneously. And we have to do that, and they've been talking about this a lot more, and this is just kind of tangential. We have to do that all in an hour. Wayne and I talked about this yesterday, like the nonsensical way that we do therapy, which is based on the medical model of an hour. You're just getting started when it's like, oh, the hour's up, I'll see you next week. No one's doing homework in between. The ones that are, there are clients that do a lot of homework in between, don't get me wrong, but they're getting basically dropped back into their old system immediate the minute that 50 minute or 60-minute mark comes and we're done. Everything that they learned literally drops because they go right back into their old.
It's like, I think Mo and I both said it. One of the first places we see this have a pretty big effect is the physical intimacy, right? And when that goes, everything starts to feel shaky. And so I like what Mo is saying about she gives the homework that starts with sensate focus and just getting connected again and feeling, that's sort of the dual process that's happening as we're trying to go back and do the repairs. So, I don't know, Mo, will you say a little bit more about how this shows up for the physical intimacy side?
Yeah, it kind of started talking about that, part of it is like, okay, I'm going to be gendered again. And we'll just use a fake couple, a female and a male. She's doing all the emotional labor. She's, scheduling the appointments. She's also asking him, trying to have conversations with him about their life and whatnot. And he's like, oh yeah, he's very like nonchalant and like, he answers her questions, but he's not really engaging with her and being really present with what's going on for her. And then he wants to engage intimately. And at that point, she has nothing left to give him, right? Like she's not getting her needs met, so she's really not feeling like engaging physically. And the common theme that I actually see is these men actually communicate and show up for their partners in a physical way. But the women are craving more emotional, maybe verbal connection, and the male partners think that they're giving them connection by showing up in this like physical way, like let me do the heavy lifting, let me give you a back rub, let's let me give you some pleasure in the bedroom or whatever. And while all of those are great, it's not fulfilling that emotional connection need that she has, so she's less likely to want to engage in that. And he's less likely to want to give her emotional connection if suddenly she stops, wanting to engage physically. So it like becomes this perpetual cycle, right? One person wants emotional connection, the other person wants physical connection. Neither person is getting any of those things, or not to, the level that they want it. And so they're shutting down.
It makes me think about, I hope this doesn't take us too far off into a tangent, but just a couple of things. I mean, one, I was actually thinking of bringing this up earlier, resentment. That's a topic that I like to talk about. Resentment being like, I see it as like a silent killer of intimacy, especially physical intimacy and also relationships. And that then, so when you brought up about by the time that they get to a therapist to talk about everything. It's become a problem. It's becoming overwhelming. And when somebody is saying like, sorry, I got distracted by the baby. Thank you. When someone is saying that, thank you, Zozo. When someone is
This is
saying
hard
that,
because we usually like one of you's watching her, but in this scenario, you're both in here. That makes sense. She can join.
no, she can't join. I mean, she's damn near.
Anyway, sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm totally distracted already. Callie mentioned something about like, oh, kind of feeling like, oh, they're doing it because I asked them to or whatnot, you know? And to me, that was a signal of, sounds like a signal of like, okay, we've waited too long. Like this has been going on for a really long time, you know, has developed some resentment in the relationship, I think, potentially. And then also, yeah, and now is killing intimacy. Anyway, all that to say that then it makes me think about this devil's advocate point that I wanted to bring up of taking an accountability for the emotional labor, you know, as the person, you know, it's hard for me to say that, but as somebody who has felt like they've done some emotional labor in a relationship, I also, I think, felt a sense of, you know, of liberation when when I took accountability of the laboring that I chose to do. Which at first felt like I had to do it, and then I realized like, wait, I don't have to do this. I don't have to do this, and I didn't know exactly what that looked like, but it was just kind of choosing to not, you know, and I think easing and calming that part of me that is like you said that wants to be in control and that's like freaks out when all the things aren't taken care of, you know. So kind of being willing to let it all just
Yep. It's
go to, you know,
it's
whatever.
it's
So
tricky. Yeah, it is tricky because that's I think, you know, when you ask these people what would happen if you just let go, and there's fear there. If I just let it go, like this won't get done, this won't get done, that's going to impact my life. So they do get into this place of no, it's trust, right? They don't trust their partner to do it, right? And what would happen if you just let go and let your partner step up to the plate in their own time? They don't believe that it can happen, and they're just at that point just watching, and the bills pile up or the dishes pile up, or and you know any opportunity to try to emotionally connect and talk about it is met with defensiveness or you know whatever, and so things are now falling apart. And so I think the control freak part comes in because, well, at least I can control these. The dishes can get done, the bills can get paid. But the resentment, what you're talking about, Melissa, is what's building, right?
yeah.
The emotional need is not being met because the other partner is absent.
Well, and so to kind of take that into, you know, resentment, it again, it was liberating for me to hear a perspective on resentment that I guess, you know, brought the focus and back to myself. Whereas like often we hear resentment talked about like, you know, resentment towards your partner because they weren't showing up or, you know, they didn't show up or care for you in the way that you needed them to or whatnot. Which I'm not excluding that, but you know, another perspective of resentment and why I believe it's so hard to get to, like to really, really um to get to is because it's like, oh, it's really about how I didn't show up or care for myself. Like I lacked the boundaries, you know, and because I'm trying to clear it up from my partner with my partner, having these expectations of my partner to change or do better or whatever, you know, it doesn't feel, I don't feel that that shift, or I don't feel that, what's it called? You were using the word um to repair. I don't feel the repair. And it's because you know, I've learned like a lot of that like undoing is within myself, you know, within ourselves. So anyway, I hope that makes sense.
I love
But
that. It really, because I think what you're saying is when we're not getting the emotional connection that we need, and we're holding our partners, we're resenting our partners for not giving it to us, and yet we're doing all the emotional labor and blah, 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 blah. We're coming from a place of victimhood, right? Like, I'm the victim, woe is me, as opposed to like, how can I empower myself, um, and recognize like I willingly chose to do this. I'm willingly choosing to stay in this relationship, even though I'm not getting what I need. And what can I do to make myself feel better? And yeah, that might mean leaving, but there's a gamut of other things that can happen in between where the the person that is feeling the lack starts to show up for themselves. And I think what you're talking about, Melissa, is when people do start showing up for themselves and taking care of themselves and not playing the victim anymore, partners often also fall into step, right? Because they're not on the receiving end of blame anymore.
Mhm.
yeah, and it makes space for everybody to take care of themselves and, and encourages your partner to do the same for
Yeah.
themselves. And
Well, this is
um,
really valuable for me, Melissa, because it is these couples come in and then the work really focuses on the one that needs to step up to the plate emotionally, and it
Mhm.
creates an imbalance in the work that we do. And now it's like, now I have an identified patient. There's something wrong with you. You're not giving your partner what she needs. And what you're saying is like, let's look at it from a more holistic perspective. And what can the partner that feels depleted do for themselves to sort of, regain some of that equilibrium? And if that makes them angry or frustrated even more, that's almost the answer right there. Like, you're not taking care of yourself, right?
mhm.
You're waiting and expecting someone else to show up for you,
Yeah.
and they haven't,
And
and you're resentful and angry about it.
Yeah, and
yeah, and this
add waiting
is
to all the emotional mental load that you're doing on top of that.
Mhm.
This like
That's even more.
this like
Yeah.
indefinite just waiting, like that's exhausting. Energetically waiting is exhausting.
Energetically waiting is exhausting. Oh my god, I'm actually taking notes for my next session.
Great.
Thanks for the supervision or the
You're welcome.
consultation.
But the stuff we're talking about is really A, it's difficult, and B, it's scary. And you'll know how I have my whole thing about homeostasis. Like this blows, we're talking about completely blowing up the homeostasis, what people have said, what they know. They can write the script of how things are going to go. And there was like, hold on. And so there has to be like an agreement, like a trust fall, like, okay, we're about to blow this up and do things differently. And that's a really difficult thing to walk people through, and it is very scary for both parties because
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
I think we should talk about homeostasis so our audience understands what that means. Do you want to explain that to them, Kelly?
Sure. I think when I try to describe to my clients what homeostasis is, I talk about we work in systems, whether your system is your family of origin, whether it's the family you have, whether it's your coworkers, whether, whatever your system is, everybody has their place. And usually people fall into that place without any kind of front loading, any kind of discussion. It's just, you just sort of know your place. And it's really scary when someone shows up differently. Think about it this way: if you know that when you argue with this one person, they are going to yell and scream and have a big to do, and then all of a sudden one time you get in an argument and they're very quiet and they're very calm, well, nobody, that's blowing up the homeostasis. That's not how this is supposed to work. That's not how this script works. And it becomes very scary, so nobody knows what their role is any longer, right? And so that homeostasis is knowing your role, knowing where everyone falls into place. And even when people will be able to identify the homeostasis they have, and they'll talk about how unhealthy or possibly even toxic it is, and they'll talk about wanting it to change, it's still very scary to do, right? It's still a very scary thing because everybody's on new ground, and even in agreement to do it, people have a very difficult time walking into that, because once you blow it up, you have to put it back together, right? And so you're again, you're having to deal with something while still having the resentments or the or not having the repairs or whatever, and still having to, go to the grocery store, still having to feed the kids, still having to pay the bills. So you're still in the process. It's not like you get to put life on pause and work and all this and then come back into it. It's like Mo said, the minute they get off the call, they're back into their homeostasis, they're back into their regular life. And so to really have people identify what their homeostasis is, what parts they like, which parts they don't like, how they would hope for them to change, and to sort of make agreements and do a trust fall of, okay, we're trying on all this new stuff. And that's a lot of work. Therapy is
Well,
work.
I want to
Things is
say this, that when homeostasis is disrupted, it's your nervous system feels it, right? And so
oh
even
yeah.
if you've had the conversation like, yeah, we need to disrupt this homeostasis, like I'm not going to respond when we argue anymore. I'm going to start responding like this, even though they're prepared for it. The nervous system feeling like, we talk a lot about like anxious attachment, avoidant attachment. They're going to start going into that, because and that's going to creates that sort of holds the old homeostasis in place. Well, if they're not going to respond to this, I'm going to do more of this, or I'm going to act like this. Like we start to respond in ways that creates a new homeostasis to balance it out. And a lot of times those are done also, um, like instinctually, right? From a
Yeah.
place of fight, flight, or freeze, right? And so those are also sort of feeding into it. So it's got to be done slowly with a lot of like repair, which is why, yeah, throwing them back into their lives after 1 hour is really hard pressed for any change to actually really happen unless they understand how it's impacting them. So it can take years. And I think for the couples that are really committed to the process, they can do it, but it just is going to take a while, because you're undoing, not just the ways of being that, but your body has to relearn it as well, right?
Yeah.
The ways that you know your body, and because relationships again, it's that interpersonal experience or whatever, like, and our sense of self. It really is, we are really shattering not just the homeostasis of the relationship, but within ourselves as well. So our identity is in question. Our whole sense of self is in question when we're no longer just looping, automatically looping our patterns that we know so well, that
And
are
a lot
familiar.
of those patterns we brought from our childhoods, right? So we're also simultaneously potentially undoing long-standing childhood attachment patterns. And that doesn't happen overnight, right? Like a lot of those things we take to our grave. So we want to find something that feels familiar. And the minute it feels unfamiliar, the likelihood of relationships falling apart are greater, much greater.
And I think this is what I was speaking to earlier, like to the macro of it, going back to the beginning when we're talking about men. I think that yeah, the script is now changing, has shifted, and what you guys are speaking about today is hella scary, right? To a lot of men, like because now you're asking me to do something I've never had to do, and it's not how things operate. And even in my sessions, I've now in two with two different people that I two different clients I work with, the idea of patriarchy has come up, and just how to shift it, how it's shifted, and how it shows up in a relationship, and how we're holding on to things that like used to be, or how parents had it, or how men are supposed to be. And so when these things start to come up, it's really hard to get somebody to see something other than that, because all they're thinking is that, well, this is how it is. This is how things are. Like this is what I'm supposed to do. And so that, like you said, asking somebody to do something differently feels hella scary, because what does that look like? What does that say about me? What does that mean? Like I've been doing it wrong this whole time, or am I whatever narrative we create in our head because of this shift? So yeah.
Yeah. Or it's hard to be like, oh, okay, my partner's taking care of themselves. So this is really them taking care of themselves, but it's very different from how they used to act before. They used to engage with me. We used to fight. And maybe when they fought, they were actually getting some of that emotional need that they really, the connection that they need, even though they're getting it negatively, they're still getting it, right? And now all of a sudden their partner's setting boundaries and they're not getting it, or whatever, but like just using that example. And that is, right, like Melissa said, we now are questioning our identity. Do I even like this person? Right? Like, what are we doing if we're not engaging in this familiar pattern? Even though I hate this pattern and it's uncomfortable, if we don't engage in it, then what are we? Um, and yeah, I think,
Yeah, but I think identifying that with your clients can be really helpful because I have some clients that really love that term and they'll say, "Hey, we're falling back into our old homeostasis. What were those two?" I just had someone come back that had been gone for like a year. I was like, "Okay, 100,000-mile tune-up. Let's do it." And they're like, "We're falling back into our old homeostasis. What were the tools we were using? We think we got lazy, and we're feeling the way we used to, and we don't like it." And so it is practice, it's repetition, it's just like anything else. And it's so easy to slip back into the old ways. Um, so it's all effort. If but I think for clients to be able to identify any kind of negative homeostasis and agree on what changes might look like is helpful.
I have
But if
an
you're listening,
example.
you don't,
I can
yeah.
share an example, I think of something I've experienced where, again, even coming from a person who has, had the experience of emotional laboring and talking about, questioning the homeostasis and whatnot. Like, even for me, this idea of like emotional depth, me seeking emotional depth and wanting that emotional depth, I think has always felt very, I don't know, just very like real to me, very, that's what I want, that's what I need. And then I think now, not that that's wrong or bad or not in alignment with who I am, but also it's been interesting and kind of scary to kind of be curious about that desire for emotional depth, and how sometimes it can, I think, be, mm, I think, let's just say, for lack of a better word, it can sometimes be this like defense mechanism, this protective mechanism that I've learned, whether that's to want and require emotional depth, because what does that mean? It for me, like that means that quote unquote, I'm taking care of myself and I'm respecting myself and all of these requirements as a woman should need or should want or should require. Um, but it's like, but do I really want that? Or is that what I think I should want? Or or what I've, yeah, been kind of wanting because I thought that it meant this or whatever. Or maybe how sometimes it makes me feel a little bit more in control when I require or want emotional depth with somebody, things like that. So that can be scary. And that is an example of how, yeah, it can push back on our own identity and sense of self and the way we've been doing things for a long time.
yeah, I really like this idea that, your clients come back and they're like, we're back into our old homeostasis. Um, because it really, like, it means that they have looked at the patterns that often don't show up in our office, right? Like, it's really hard sometimes from a therapist perspective to know what a partner is doing that's a bid for emotional connection, right? Like, for example, I know a couple where the partner that's seeking emotional connection just kind of like, will come home from work and just like tell her partner all the details about her job, right? And really what she's doing is she wants to have a conversation, she's trying to engage with him, and his response is like, I don't want to hear about all that, right? And so until we like figured out like this, it sounds so small, right? But like, so these aren't the types of things that clients are talking about in our office necessarily, but that was her way of like looking for connection. So like sometimes we're looking for connection and we're doing it in ways that are kind of just like our partner isn't picking up on those cues. right? And so being able to point out little nuances in why their homeostasis feels uncomfortable, I think is can be really helpful. But we don't get an opportunity necessarily to see that aspect in the relationship unless we allow them to like have some conversations in the session, which I think is a good thing to do, is just sort of let it happen. But
Yeah, and I think we're talking about. I'm trying to think about individual work I do. Like if I'm not working with a couple, but I'm working with just one person, right? And I know that I have a client that I've worked with for a very, very long time, and so I've seen her through, through the end of a really long relationship, and then kind of some dating, and I think she has identified things that she's done and ways in which she's let relationships begin that didn't work out for her. And I think what we're having to work on now is for her not to, that she calls it her emotional baggage, right? For her not to be so rigid with that emotional baggage and bringing it into the next relationship, so that she's starting out really really hardcore. Like these are ways in which I know that I don't let things begin in a healthy manner. And so she's being really rigid and hardcore about it. And I'm like, well, hold on. Some of that is stuff you're bringing into it. Some of that is stuff that you created with these other people. But I think just the fact that she's identified it is important. And so, but this is work that people can do individually as well. I don't think they have to be in relationship necessarily to kind of identify it and work on it. And I guess that's a form of front loading, right? You're going into the next relationship with this awareness about yourself.
yeah, that's really good at one-on-one work.
Yeah.
And it can be valuable to do one-on-one work sometimes if you are seeing the couple.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that was a really good chat today. Any other thoughts before we go?
I think that's
No.
it. I enjoyed this topic. Thank you, Mom.
Yeah. I do want to say one thing. Wayne, I feel like we were kind of hard on dudes. So
No, no, no. I don't look.
I know we love you and that it's not aimed at you, but thanks for being here and
It's not like it's not kind of almost a little deserved at this point now. It's a lot of we see the pushback in politics that's happening right now, and just all the things we see the pushback because there's a lot of resistance to shift and change right now. So I think that it needs to be spoken about more actually, and just
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
And because
whatever.
it
Thanks
benefits,
for
I mean,
being
it
here.
ultimately benefits men too.
it does. It
Yeah.
absolutely
I
does.
think men are struggling, and
Yeah.
men would love to know where they can, how and where to change. So
Yeah.
Because men are also impacted by patriarchy.
oh
Absolutely.
yeah,
So
men are,
their own
Absolutely.
if not
patriarchy.
more
Yeah.
so, right?
Yeah.
If not
Yes.
more so.
The system that's created by and to benefit is hurting them, hurting us, right? Hurting, yeah,
Because
yeah,
it wasn't created by you; it was created by, you know, someone else.
The old
yeah,
ones do.
yeah,
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 I
yeah,
know.
yes.
But thanks for listening to all our. Thank you for listening. Shades of Pleasure podcast is currently unsponsored and is brought to you by Los Angeles Sex Therapy and Last Collective in partnership with Shades Therapy and Shades of Non-Monogamy. To support our endeavor so we can continue to bring this pleasurable content, please visit our Substack at shadesofpleasure.substack.com. Thank you for listening, and until next time.